It's been 15 years. 15 years since my son Noah died in that terrible accident. I can still feel the sting of the loss like it happened yesterday. I remember every detail, the moment I saw him in the casket, the feel of his cold skin beneath my fingertips, the way he looked as though he was simply sleeping, but knowing, deep down, that I would never hear his laughter again, never see his eyes light up in excitement. Never hold him close and tell him everything would be okay. I spent those years with a hole in my chest, a deep, raw emptiness. Each day, I went through the motions of life, but I wasn't truly living. I wasn't whole. There was a part of me that stayed locked in that day, the day he was taken from me. The pain never went away. It only became something I learned to carry, like a weight I could never put down. But then, just last night, something happened. Something that I still can't explain. At exactly 3:27 a.m., my phone rang, the screen lit up, and there it was. Noah's name. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. Maybe my mind had conjured it up. I had hoped for this moment, to hear his voice just one more time. But I knew it was impossible. He was gone. I had seen him buried. I had kissed his cold forehead and told him goodbye forever, but the name on the screen told me otherwise. My hands shook violently as I reached for the phone, heart pounding in my chest. The voice on the other end was familiar, but it couldn't be. I felt my stomach twist in knots. Mom, the voice said, soft and confused. Where am I? It's so dark in here. I froze. I couldn't breathe. My world came to a screeching halt. That voice. It was him. It was Noah. My son, the boy I had buried 15 years ago, was speaking to me from the other side of the grave. How do you respond to that? How do you answer when you're hearing the voice of someone you thought was gone forever? My mind raced, trying to comprehend what was happening. Was it a dream, a glitch? Or had I finally lost my grip on reality after all these years of grief? But there was no mistaking it. I knew that voice. I had listened to it for 17 years, and now it was here again, calling me from the darkness. Mom, where am I? It's completely dark here, Noah repeated, his voice shaky, desperate. The room felt colder. My hands went numb as I held the phone tighter, like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. I could barely form words, but I managed to whisper, Noah. Is that really you? There was a pause, an eerie silence that stretched on forever. Then, in that familiar tone, he said, Yeah, it's me. But where am I? It's so dark. I can't move. What's happening? The air felt thick, like something pressing against me, trying to suffocate me. My thoughts were scrambled, but all I could focus on was the fact that my son was talking to me. For 15 years, I had mourned him. I had visited his grave every week, speaking to him as though he could hear me. I'd kept his room the same, untouched, frozen in time. I had never let go. And now, here he was, reaching out to me from beyond the grave. I was desperate for answers. Was this some sort of cruel joke, a prank? But who could replicate his voice so perfectly? How could anyone know what he sounded like, let alone make it seem so real? This had to be more than just a mistake. Mom, it's really dark. I don't know where I am. I'm scared. Noah's voice trembled through the phone. My heart shattered all over again as I listened to his fear. The boy I had protected my whole life, the boy who had always turned to me for comfort, was now trapped somewhere in the darkness. I blinked back tears, struggling to steady my breath. Noah, where are you? What happened? How are you calling me? My voice was barely a whisper, filled with disbelief and dread. I don't know. I was in the accident. I remember the rain, the headlights coming at me. And then nothing. It was like I just disappeared. The world around me felt like it was slipping away. My mind could barely keep up with the impossibility of the situation. But one thing was clear, this was him. I could feel it in every fiber of my being. This wasn't some ghost or hallucination. It was Noah. I tried to steady my racing thoughts. Noah, listen to me, You died, I buried you. I held your hand as they lowered your casket into the ground. There was a silence on the other end, as if the words I spoke had stunned him into disbelief. No, Mom, I can't be dead. I'm talking to you. I'm here, I'm thinking, I'm feeling. The room seemed to close in on me. I couldn't breathe. My head spun, trying to grasp what was happening. Was this a mistake? Could he be alive? Was he trapped in some sort of between world? I had heard of stories like this, of people who had come back after being declared dead, but they never seemed real. They were just tales, fables. And yet here I was, holding a phone, hearing my son's voice, real as day. Noah, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. How is this possible? I don't know, Mom, his voice cracked. I remember the accident. I remember everything before, and then nothing. Just darkness. And now I'm here, but I don't know where here is. The phone signal crackled, and for a moment I thought I had lost him. But then his voice came back, more desperate than before. Mom, I'm cold. It's like I'm in a box. I can't move. I don't know what's happening. My heart pounded in my chest. The only box I could think of was a casket, the one I had watched them lower into the earth. Could it be? Could he be alive in there? I stumbled out of bed, my legs unsteady as I ran to the window, the full weight of the situation pressing down on me. Noah, are you? Are you in your casket? Are you in the ground? He paused before responding, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Mom, but it feels like it. I feel like I'm in a box. It's so dark. There's wood around me. I can feel it. And I can't move. Please, Mom, help me. The room seemed to spin as the reality of his words hit me. How was this possible? How was this possible? How was my son, buried for 15 years, able to talk to me from somewhere between life and death? I knew then that this wasn't a prank. This wasn't a dream. This was real. My son was trapped, and somehow he had found a way to contact me. I don't know how long I stood there, trying to make sense of the madness unfolding in front of me. But I knew one thing for sure. I had to help him. Whatever it took, I had to find a way to bring him back, to pull him out of that darkness. And then the phone went silent. Just like that, my son was gone again. The screen went black. The call ended. I stood there in the quiet darkness of my room, my body trembling. My heart was racing. My mind was reeling. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know how it was possible. But I knew one thing. I couldn't just sit here. I had to act. Noah needed me. And I wasn't going to let him down. The phone had gone silent, and the world felt impossibly still. I stood there, gripping the device in my hands like it was the only lifeline I had left. The call had ended, but the words Noah had spoken echoed in my mind, rattling my sanity. I'm cold. It feels like a box. I can't move. I couldn't let it end like that. I couldn't just wait. My heart was pounding in my chest as I tried to make sense of the nightmare unfolding before me. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. My son had died 15 years ago, yet here he was, speaking to me as though he was still alive, or at least trapped somewhere in between. I rushed to my computer, my hands shaking as I typed the number Noah had called me from into the search bar. Of course, there was nothing there. The number was just a dead line now, long disconnected. It had to be. But I couldn't shake the feeling that somehow, someway, Noah was still out there. Could it be a mistake? Could someone else be behind this? My mind was a whirlwind of questions, but none of them made any sense. How could my son, buried for over a decade, still be communicating with me through a phone? I couldn't bear the thought of losing him again, especially after hearing his voice. But if this wasn't a dream, if it was real, I had to find him. I couldn't sit idle. I grabbed my coat, my hand still trembling as I stuffed my phone into my pocket. The only thought in my mind was one thing: I have to find him. Before I left, I did what I had always done since that day. I went to his room. I stood there in the doorway, taking in the untouched sanctuary. The bed was exactly as he left it. The guitar was still leaning in the corner, the posters still hanging on the walls, and the half-open notebook on his desk. His things were frozen in time, a reflection of the child I had lost. But now I wasn't just a mother mourning her son's death. I was someone who had just received a message from the other side. I grabbed the picture of him that sat on the desk, a little smile on his face as he held up his winning swimming trophy. I clutched it to my chest, feeling the weight of it, and thought about the promise I made to myself all those years ago, to never forget him, to keep him alive in my heart, even if he was gone. But was he really gone? I shook my head, trying to clear the overwhelming swirl of thoughts. No, I couldn't think that way. Noah had spoken to me. His voice was real. The fear in his words was real. I couldn't waste another minute. The night air was crisp as I stepped out of the house. The streets were eerily quiet, the usual sounds of the city muted under the weight of my thoughts. I couldn't drive fast enough. My mind was spinning, but I knew exactly where I had to go. There was only one place that could give me the answers I needed. The cemetery. It felt absurd even as I said it aloud. The cemetery. The very place I had visited every Sunday for the last 15 years to talk to him, to honor him. But now it wasn't just a place of mourning. It was the key to the mystery that had turned my life upside down. I drove like a woman possessed, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. The city was empty at this hour, and the world around me seemed to blur into a dark, endless stretch of pavement. I passed the same landmarks, the same roads I had driven down hundreds of times before. But tonight, it all felt different. The familiar streets now felt like a maze, leading me to an impossible answer. When I reached the cemetery, it was nearly 4:00 a.m. The gate was locked, the guard booth empty. But I knew the watchman, a man named Mr. Silas, who had always been kind to me during my visits. I knocked frantically on the window of his booth, my breath fogging up the glass. His tired eyes met mine as he slowly woke up. Double quotes Ms. Allah, what's going on? It's after hours, I need to get in, I said, my voice desperate. It's urgent. Please, Silas. He blinked, clearly confused. But he must have seen something in my eyes that convinced him to help. He grabbed his flashlight and a set of keys, muttering under his breath as he stepped out to unlock the gate. Ms. Allah, are you sure about this? It's the middle of the night. I'm sure. I cut him off, my voice firm despite the chaos swirling inside me. I need to find him. I need answers. I could tell he wanted to ask more questions, but he didn't. He simply nodded and followed me through the silent cemetery, the moonlight casting long shadows across the rows of graves. I could feel the weight of it, this sacred place, this place where my son had been buried all those years ago. The cemetery had always been a place of peace for me, a place where I could talk to him in the silence of the night. But tonight, it felt different. It felt like I was walking into a storm of uncertainty. The chill in the air seemed to bite at my skin, but I barely felt it. My mind was locked on the task at hand, finding Noah. We reached his grave, the same spot I had stood in so many times before. The stone was weathered but still standing, and the name Noah Vance was etched into it. As it had been all those years ago, I fell to my knees in front of the grave, my heart pounding as I stared at the earth below. What was I hoping to find? A sign, a clue. Then I remembered the phone call. The phone. The phone Noah had mentioned. The same one he was buried with, the one I had thought was lost forever. The ground was hard, but I couldn't stop myself from clawing at it. I didn't know what I was doing, but I had to try. Maybe there was something. Maybe this wasn't a mistake. Maybe I could bring him back. I scraped away the dirt with my bare hands, my fingers raw from the rough earth. But there was no sign of anything unusual. The grave was undisturbed. The dirt was packed tight, as if nothing had moved. As if nothing had ever changed. Silas stood behind me, his face filled with concern. Miss Allah, please. You're going to hurt yourself. But I couldn't stop. I had to know. I had to understand what was happening. I reached deeper into the dirt, my fingers scraping against something cold and smooth. I stopped. Something was there. Something had shifted beneath the surface. I pulled harder, my heart racing. It wasn't just dirt. It was metal. Mr. Silas, I gasped. There's something here. The earth felt unnaturally cold beneath my fingertips as I dug deeper, my breath shallow, my mind racing. I had no idea what I was hoping to find, but the sensation that something was wrong, that there was something more to Noah's call than just a fleeting moment of madness, overwhelmed me. My hands, slick with sweat and dirt, trembled with a mix of fear and determination. Miss Allah, Mr. Silas's voice was gentle but insistent, his breath fogging up in the cold night air. Please, you need to stop. This isn't good for you. But I couldn't stop. I refused to. Every part of my being screamed that something was buried here, something that would explain why my son was calling me from beyond the grave. If he had called me, there had to be a reason. If his voice could reach me through the phone after all these years, surely there was something that could explain it. As I clawed away at the dirt, my fingers brushed against something hard, something unnatural. I froze. It wasn't the typical smoothness of a casket's wood. No, this was metal. I took a deep breath, mustering every ounce of strength I had left. Mr. Silas, I called out in a strained voice, my heart pounding in my chest. It's metal. It's metal down here. Mr. Silas, his face filled with concern, crouched beside me. Miss Allah, you don't know what you're digging into. Please stop. But I couldn't hear him. I was too far gone, my mind consumed by the need for answers. The dirt, now scattered around me, felt like a barrier between the world I knew and the unexplainable reality I was desperate to uncover. I continued digging, my hands shaking, my pulse ringing in my ears, until I uncovered a small, aged piece of metal. It was tarnished and worn with time, but unmistakable. It was a part of a cell phone. My breath caught in my throat. I pulled harder, digging frantically until the entire object was exposed. I didn't need to see the screen to know what it was. The moment I touched it, I knew. The same old Nokia, the one Noah had begged me to bury with him. The one that had somehow defied the ravages of time, still connected to the world in a way no one could understand. I couldn't speak. My body went cold, as if a shock of electricity had surged through me. How was this possible? Noah, I whispered, my voice a mix of disbelief and desperation. Noah, was this you? How are you still here? The words hung in the air like a curse, unanswered. There was no response. I looked at the phone in my hands. It was covered in dirt, but the glow from the screen, faint but undeniable, flickered back to life. The same faint blue light that I had seen on my own phone when I spoke to him. I pressed the power button, my breath coming in short gasps. The screen lit up, casting an eerie light across the cemetery. And then the screen displayed a new message. Get me out of here. Please, I'm running out of time. I could hardly breathe. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to stop, to walk away, to leave well enough alone. But I couldn't leave him there. My son, my precious boy, was somehow, impossibly, reaching out to me. And I had to answer. I glanced up at Mr. Silas, whose expression had gone from concerned to alarmed. What are you going to do with it? He asked, his voice trembling with confusion. I'm taking it, I said, my voice hoarse but determined. I'm going to find a way to bring him back. The old man's eyes widened, as if he had never thought this was possible, as if my words had sent him into a silent panic. Miss Allah, you can't, I have to, I interrupted, clutching the phone in my hands like it was the last thread keeping me connected to my son. I don't know what's happening, but Noah is still here, and I'm going to find him. I'm not leaving him in that grave. I stood up, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I glanced one last time at the grave, Noah's grave, the grave that had held my son for 15 long years. But now, with the phone in my hands and the faint pulse of the light on the screen, I felt a glimmer of hope. The impossible seemed real, and I had to follow the trail, no matter how absurd it felt. I looked at Mr. Silas. "I need to go," I said, my voice unyielding. "Can you help me?" He seemed to hesitate for a long moment before finally nodding. "You've got your mind set on this, haven't you?" "I have to," I repeated, my voice quieter this time, but the urgency was still there. "I have to know what happened. I have to find out what Noah is trying to tell me." The night seemed to stretch on as we walked out of the cemetery, Mr. Silas following reluctantly behind me. My mind raced, trying to put the pieces together, trying to make sense of the fact that my son, the boy I had buried, was now reaching out to me from somewhere I couldn't understand. Somewhere between the world of the living and the dead. When we reached my car, I barely registered the cold wind or the quiet rustle of leaves in the night. All that mattered was the phone in my hand. The phone that was supposed to be gone forever. The phone that had somehow, impossibly, come back to life. I drove in a daze, my eyes glued to the road, but my mind was elsewhere, back with Noah, wherever he was. The messages kept coming, sporadically flashing on the screen, always begging for help, always pleading for me to get him out. "I'm running out of time. Please help me," the message repeated, over and over, each one more desperate than the last. I needed to act. I needed to bring him back. As I drove, my mind began to race with possibilities. Could he really be alive? Could the impossible have happened? Was there something more to his death than I had ever known? I had to find out. I couldn't rest until I did. The phone began to buzz again, and I glanced down, half expecting it to be another message from Noah. But this time, it wasn't a message. It was a call. The screen read, "Noah, incoming." Callie answered it immediately, heart in my throat. "Mom." The voice on the other end was shaky, filled with fear. "I don't know how much longer I can hold on. It's so dark. Please get me out of here." My hands shook as I clutched the phone, tears welling in my eyes. "I'm coming, Noah. I'm coming to get you." The call cut off abruptly, and I was left in the silence of the car, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea what was happening. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to stop until I found my son. The phone remained silent after that final call from Noah. I could feel my heart beating wildly in my chest as I drove through the empty streets, the world outside seeming to fade into the background. I focused only on the road and the messages flashing in my mind, the desperation in Noah's voice, the fear, the plea for help. I turned the wheel sharply, pulling into my driveway. I didn't know what to expect next, but I couldn't go another second without understanding more. I couldn't sit idly by, pretending this was just some freak accident. This was Noah. He had somehow, impossibly, reached out to me after 15 years. I rushed inside, the sound of my footsteps echoing through the quiet house. The air felt thick, like I was stepping into a different world altogether. Everything inside was still the same, his room untouched, the pictures on the walls, the books on the shelves. It was as though no time had passed since I'd lost him. But I wasn't just grieving anymore. Something deeper had stirred, something that could not be ignored. I glanced at the phone in my hand. The blue glow still pulsed weakly, like it was alive. Alive in a way that no phone should be. I sat down at the kitchen table, hands trembling as I placed it in front of me, staring at the screen. "Help me. Please, Mom, it's too dark. I'm running out of time." Over and over again, the words kept flashing. But how was this even possible? How was my son still here, still trying to communicate? Was he really in some kind of purgatory? A space between life and death? A sudden thought hit me, cold and unsettling. What if this wasn't a supernatural phenomenon at all? What if Noah was trapped? What if he had been buried alive? The thought made my stomach twist. Stories of people being declared dead only to wake up inside their own coffins flickered in my mind like an old film reel. But no, I had seen him at the funeral. I had touched his cold skin, said goodbye. I had watched as they lowered his casket into the ground. There was no mistaking that finality. He had been dead. So how could this be happening? I ran a hand through my hair, frustration bubbling to the surface. I had to find answers, and the only way to do that was to keep moving forward. I pulled the phone back to me, pressing a finger against the screen. There had to be something I was missing. The messages, the strange glow, the calls. It all had to mean something. A new message popped up, more urgent than the last. I'm still here, Mom. I need your help. I'm not sure how long I have left. Please help me get out. I swallowed hard, my breath catching in my throat. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't a hallucination. This was real. My son was speaking to me from somewhere beyond the grave, and I had to help him. I needed to understand how this was possible. How had Noah, who I had buried, managed to reach out to me after so many years? The questions piled up in my mind faster than I could answer them, each one more terrifying than the last. I grabbed my keys and stood up, determined. There was no way I could leave things like this. If Noah was truly in trouble, if he was truly stuck somewhere, I had to act. I had to get to him. There was only one place that could hold the answers. The cemetery dot as I made my way back to the cemetery. The night air felt colder than before, the wind carrying a sense of urgency. Every second counted. But what was I looking for? What could I possibly do to help Noah? I wasn't a medium. I didn't have any special powers. I was just a mother who couldn't let go of her son, and now the impossible had become her reality. I drove faster than I should have, the darkness of the night swallowing up the streets around me. The car's headlights cut through the fog, illuminating the way ahead, but nothing seemed clear. Not anymore. What could I possibly expect to find at his grave? A sign, an answer, a way to bring him back. The cemetery gate loomed ahead. The familiar path that I had walked so many times now felt foreign. My mind was spinning, trying to process everything that had happened. As I drove past the rows of headstones, I saw the familiar oak tree, the one under which Noah had been buried. The place where my son had been laid to rest all those years ago. I parked quickly, jumping out of the car without even thinking. The chill of the night air bit into my skin as I rushed toward his grave. The silence here was deafening, and the weight of it pressed down on me like a physical force. When I reached his grave, I could feel my heart racing in my chest. It was as though everything inside me was screaming, urging me to do something, anything. But what? How could I even begin to understand what was happening? I stood there for a moment, staring at the marble headstone. It looked the same as always. The inscription was still clear, Noah Vance, 1993 to 2010, beloved son, forever in our hearts. I closed my eyes, letting the memories of my son flood my mind. I remembered his laugh, his smile, the way his eyes sparkled when he was excited. He was my everything. And now I had to save him, but how? Suddenly I heard something. A faint, almost imperceptible sound, a beep. I looked down at the phone in my hand, the screen flickering to life again. Mom, I'm so scared. Please help me. I don't have much time left. My heart pounded as I pressed the phone to my ear. The line was static-filled, but the voice, it was unmistakably Noah's. Mom, are you there? Please, it's so dark. I can't see anything. I don't know where I am. I stood there, frozen in place. Was this really happening? Was this really my son speaking to me, from beyond the grave? Tears welled up in my eyes as I whispered, I'm here, Noah, I'm here. Don't worry. I'm going to get you out. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know what I was going to find. But one thing was certain, I wasn't leaving until I had answers. The wind howled as I stood at Noah's grave, the air biting at my skin, but I barely noticed. My focus was entirely on the phone in my hand, where Noah's voice, faint but unmistakable, crackled through the static. "Mom, I'm here, please. Help me." It was him. There was no doubt. It had to be. His voice, filled with fear and desperation, was something I could never mistake. The same voice I had comforted so many times, the same voice I had said goodbye to 15 years ago. But now it was alive again, pulsing through my phone like a lifeline, like a signal from beyond the grave. My fingers trembled as I clutched the phone, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on me. How could this be happening? I thought again. How could Noah, the boy I had buried, be speaking to me, pleading for help? I looked down at the grave, my eyes tracing the familiar lines of the headstone. The stone that had marked the place where my son had been laid to rest all those years ago. My mind raced. Was he really still down there? Was he trapped? Could it be? I shook my head, trying to dispel the thoughts. But nothing made sense anymore. Nothing could explain the phone calls, the desperate pleas. Nothing could explain how I was standing here now, talking to a son who had been gone for so long. I heard his voice again, coming through the phone, even more faint this time, almost as if he was struggling to hold on. "Mom, it's so dark. I don't know how much longer I have. Please, you have to help me. You have to get me out of here." I could hear his fear, his panic. It was enough to break me. My heart ached with a pain that went beyond grief, beyond loss. This wasn't just about mourning anymore. It was about saving my son, or at least, whatever part of him was left. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. There was no more time for questions. There was no time to figure out how or why this was happening. I had to act. For Noah, I had to find him. I looked around, my eyes scanning the cemetery. It was silent, the only sound coming from the rustling of the leaves in the wind. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting long shadows over the graves. The cemetery, which had once been a place of peace and reflection, now felt like a maze that held the answers I so desperately needed. My heart beat faster as I thought about what to do next. What if Noah was trapped? What if there was some mistake, some terrible error in the way they had declared him dead? Could it be that they had made a mistake at the hospital? Maybe he wasn't actually dead when they buried him. The thought made my stomach churn. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If Noah could talk to me, if he could somehow reach me after all these years, there had to be something to it. It couldn't just be a random glitch. It couldn't just be coincidence. I couldn't waste another second. I reached down and pulled the shovel from the back of my car, a tool I had kept in the trunk for reasons I hadn't thought about in years. I had never imagined that I would use it this way, to dig up my own son's grave. But now, with each passing second, the fear in Noah's voice haunted me. I had to know the truth. I had to see for myself. "Mr. Silas," I called over my shoulder, my voice trembling with determination. "I need your help. You have to trust me. I need to open the grave." He had been standing quietly behind me, still trying to process the events unfolding before him. His face was pale, and I could see the reluctance in his eyes. "Miss Allah, this is madness. You can't do this. You've been through enough. Please stop." I shook my head, resolute. "I can't stop. I won't stop until I know the truth. Please, I need you to help me." His hesitation was palpable, but finally he stepped forward, his face a mixture of fear and sympathy. "I'll help you," he said, his voice quiet. "But this is something you may never be able to understand." "I don't care," I replied, my voice firm. "I just need to know if he's really there, if he's really alive, or trapped, or whatever this is." With that, Mr. Silas nodded and took a step back. He seemed to accept that there was no turning back from this. He knew as well as I did that we couldn't leave without answers. Together, we began to dig. The shovel hit the dirt with a dull thud, and I felt the tension in my chest tighten with every scoop. Each shovel full of dirt felt like it was digging through my very soul. I had never imagined I would be here, doing this. The sound of the shovel hitting wood sent a jolt of panic through me. The casket. It was right there beneath the soil. We worked together in silence, the minutes dragging on as we unearthed the wooden casket. The night air was growing colder, and my hands ached from the effort, but I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we exposed the lid of the casket. My breath caught in my throat as I looked at the solid wood, the grave that had held my son for so long. I stood there for a moment, staring at it, as if hoping that somehow, miraculously, the answers would reveal themselves without us having to go further. But there was no way around it. I had to know. I had to see him. I reached down and ran my fingers along the edge of the casket, feeling the cool wood beneath my touch. It was heavier than I expected, sealed tightly, just as it had been all those years ago. But now I wasn't just mourning him. I wasn't just remembering the son I had lost. I was trying to understand something far bigger, far more terrifying. I turned to Mr. Silas, my voice barely a whisper. "Help me open it." He nodded, and together we lifted the heavy lid, the wood creaking under our combined effort. The moment it opened, a strange, unnatural chill washed over me. The air felt thick, almost like it was holding its breath, and then I saw him. Noah. He lay there, just as I remembered him, or at least, his body was. His skin was pale, but still intact, not rotting, not decayed. He looked as though he had simply fallen asleep, except for the unmistakable stillness, the lack of life. And yet, something was wrong. A faint, almost imperceptible glow pulsed from beneath his hands, a soft, eerie light that emanated from the phone clutched in his cold fingers. I gasped, stepping forward. It was the same phone, the one I had dug up, still glowing in his grasp. The words on the screen seemed to flicker in the dim light. "I'm here, Mom. I'm still here. Please don't let go." Tears sprang to my eyes as I bent down beside him, my heart pounding. This wasn't a hallucination. This wasn't a mistake. Noah was still here, but what did it mean? How was this possible? The phone beeped again, a new message flashing on the screen. I'm trapped between two worlds. "Please, Mom, get me out." I could barely hold myself together as I stood there, trembling beside my son's body. The impossible had become real. The glow from Noah's phone pulsed weakly in the dim light of the cemetery, casting an eerie illumination over his still form. My breath caught in my throat as I stared down at him. It was like looking at a lifeless doll, frozen in time, but the phone in his hand. The glow, it was as if he was still trying to communicate with me. Every part of me screamed that this was wrong, that I shouldn't be here, that I had no right to disturb what was supposed to be his final resting place. But another part of me, the part that couldn't bear the thought of losing him again, urged me to continue. I had to understand. I had to find out why he was still here, still trying to reach me. I knelt beside the casket, my fingers trembling as I reached for the phone in Noah's cold hand. The screen flickered, flashing the message once again. "I'm here, Mom. I'm still here. Please don't let go." My heart shattered all over again as I read those words. They were a plea, not just for help, but for connection, for something beyond death. I gently pried the phone from his fingers, my breath hitching as I saw the time on the screen. 3:57 a.m., the same time the phone call had come in earlier. I felt a strange mixture of dread and hope. Was this some kind of sign? A moment in time that was frozen? But no, I couldn't think like that. This wasn't a sign. This was reality. Noah was still somewhere beyond the grave, reaching out. And I had to get to the bottom of it. I couldn't just sit here, clinging to the past. If there was a way to save him, I had to try. I looked up at Mr. Silas, who stood back a few feet, his face pale as he stared at the scene in front of him. "What's happening?" He whispered, as if too afraid to speak louder. "I don't know," I said softly, still in shock. "But I'm not leaving without answers." Mr. Silas nodded, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. But he didn't argue. He had seen enough tonight to know that something strange, something unexplainable was happening. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking beneath me, and I gently placed the phone in my pocket, not wanting to leave it behind. The glow, the faint pulse of light, seemed to follow me as I backed away from the grave. I looked down at Noah's face one last time. He looked as though he was simply sleeping, the way I had imagined him on that final day, except now there was this impossible presence, this pulse of life still connected to him. How could this be? I whispered to myself. How is this possible? I didn't expect an answer. There were no words that could explain the situation. All I had were questions that seemed to have no answers. Why was Noah still here? Why hadn't he moved on? And more importantly, why was he reaching out to me now, after all this time? I turned to Mr. Silas, who had been watching me, his face a mixture of disbelief and concern. What should I do? I asked, my voice cracking. He stepped closer, glancing nervously at the grave before meeting my eyes. I think you need to get some help. This isn't something you can handle on your own. I've never seen anything like this. I know, I whispered, more to myself than to him. But what if I'm the only one who can help him? Mr. Silas didn't answer. He simply nodded and walked a few steps away, as if trying to give me space to think. But there was no space to think. Not anymore. My mind was consumed by the mystery, the unanswered questions, the undeniable fact that my son was somehow still here, still existing in some form. I felt a cold chill as the wind blew past me, rattling the branches of the old oak tree under which Noah was buried. It was as though the air itself was charged with something unexplainable, something that defied logic. I could almost hear Noah's voice again, faint but clear in my mind. Help me, Mom, I need you. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the overwhelming feelings that flooded through me. I had to stay focused. I had to understand what was happening. I turned to Mr. Silas. I'm going to need to get in touch with someone who knows more about this, I said, trying to steady my voice. Do you know anyone who can help? He hesitated for a moment, clearly conflicted, but then nodded. I know a man. A local priest, Father Dominic. He's helped with unusual situations in the past. People say he has some knowledge of the supernatural. I can't promise he'll have answers, but he might be able to help. I nodded, feeling a surge of hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. Anything was better than standing here, helpless. I had to move forward, even if the path was unclear. Please, Mr. Silas, I said, my voice shaking. I need to speak with him. He nodded again and reached for his phone, typing in the number. I stood there, trying to steady my breathing, trying to absorb the enormity of everything that had happened tonight. How was I going to explain all this? How could I possibly ask for help when the very thing I was dealing with felt like something out of a nightmare? As Mr. Silas spoke to Father Dominic on the phone, I couldn't help but glance back down at the grave. There, beneath the earth, was Noah, my son, and I could still feel him, his presence lingering in the air like a shadow I couldn't escape. The phone in my pocket buzzed suddenly, jolting me out of my thoughts. I pulled it out, heart hammering. The screen lit up, and the message read, Mom, I'm getting weaker. I don't know how much longer I can stay here. Please, hurry, I gasped, my eyes stinging with tears. I hadn't realized how much time had passed since the first call. I hadn't realized how much he had been waiting for me, waiting for someone to find him, to bring him back. Mr. Silas, I said urgently, we need to get to Father Dominic as soon as possible. Every second counts. He hung up the phone and turned to me, his face now filled with determination. I've spoken to him. He's going to meet us at the church. Let's go. The drive to the church felt like it took forever. The streets blurred outside my window as I gripped the steering wheel with both hands, my heart racing with a mixture of fear and hope. I couldn't shake the thought that I was walking further into the unknown, that what lay ahead might change everything, or make the situation even more incomprehensible than it already was. Silas sat in the passenger seat, quiet and tense, his hands folded tightly in his lap. I could feel his anxiety, and it only added to my own. We were about to meet Father Dominic, a man I had heard whispers about but never truly believed in. They said he was knowledgeable in strange occurrences, events beyond the normal, but I had always dismissed such talk as superstition. But now, with everything that had happened, with the phone, the messages, Noah's desperate calls, I had no choice but to place my faith in this stranger who seemed to have some understanding of things I couldn't even begin to grasp. I finally pulled into the church parking lot, the dim light from the street lamps casting long shadows over the old stone building. The church stood like a sentinel, ancient and still, watching over the quiet neighborhood. The cold wind seemed to intensify as I walked toward the entrance. My breath visible in the air, I could feel Mr. Silas' presence behind me, his footsteps heavy on the ground. But I couldn't focus on anything other than the door in front of me, the door that would lead me to the answers I so desperately sought. The heavy wooden door creaked open as I pushed it, revealing the dimly lit interior of the church. The scent of incense lingered in the air, thick and calming. The flickering candlelight illuminated the pews, casting soft, warm light over the quiet sanctuary. It was peaceful here, or it had been until I arrived, carrying a storm of confusion and dread with me. Father Dominic stood at the altar, his back to us, muttering quietly as if he had been waiting for us all along. He was tall, with greying hair and a weathered face that seemed to have seen more than his fair share of strange occurrences. When he turned, his dark eyes met mine, and for a moment, I felt like he could see right through me, as though he already knew everything I was carrying inside. "You've come," he said in a low, steady voice, as though it were a simple statement of fact. "You're here because of the boy, Noah." I froze, my breath caught in my throat. How did he know? How did you know? I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. He smiled faintly, his gaze steady but full of something far beyond simple understanding. "I've been expecting you. There are things in this world that science cannot explain, and there are things that even the most devout don't understand. You're not the first mother to seek answers, and you won't be the last." I didn't know how to respond. I felt a lump rise in my throat, the weight of his words pressing down on me. Was he telling me that this had happened before? That others had faced the same impossible situation I was now dealing with? "Father Dominic, please," I began, my voice trembling. "I need help. My son, he's calling me. He says he's still here, and I need to know why. He's trapped, I think, but I don't know how to get him out. Please." Father Dominic regarded me for a long moment, his gaze softening. "Sit down," he said quietly, motioning to one of the pews. "There is much I must explain to you, though I warn you, it is not a simple story." I sat down, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, and waited for him to speak. Mr. Silas took a seat beside me, his brow furrowed with concern. Clearly as eager for answers as I was, Father Dominic took a deep breath, closing his eyes for a moment as if he were gathering his thoughts. "I know what you're going through," he said softly, "but you must understand that the world is far more complex than you've been led to believe. There are realms beyond the physical world, spaces between life and death, where souls can get lost." I shuddered at the word, lost. It was a word I had never allowed myself to associate with Noah, but now, hearing it from him, I couldn't escape the growing dread that twisted in my stomach. "There are many forces at play here," Father Dominic continued, his voice heavy with knowledge and sorrow. "You've felt the presence of your son, haven't you? Felt him reaching out to you through the phone, through his messages?" I nodded, my throat tight. "Yes, it's him. I don't understand it, Father. He's been gone for so long. I saw him. I buried him. But now, Now he's reaching out, and I don't know how to help him. I need to know what's happening." Father Dominic's gaze softened even further. He lowered his voice, leaning in slightly. "There are spirits, souls, that are unable to move on. Some remain attached to this world due to unfinished business, unresolved emotions, or a deep desire to return to those they loved." My chest tightened. I could barely breathe as his words sank in. "You mean Noah?" I whispered. "He's stuck between worlds." Father Dominic nodded slowly. "That's one possibility. Sometimes the ties between the living and the dead are so strong that they create a bond that cannot be severed easily. Your grief, your love for him, it might be what's holding him here. That connection is a bridge, but it's fragile, and he's struggling to break free." I felt a tear slip down my cheek, though I didn't wipe it away. "So, is this my fault? Did I do something wrong? Did my grief keep him here?" "No," Father Dominic said quickly, his voice firm but gentle. "You loved him, and that love created a bond. But that bond can also cause pain, confusion, and a sort of limbo. Noah is not the first soul to remain tied to this world like this, and he won't be the last. But there is a way to help him." I straightened up, my heart pounding in my chest. How can I help him?" "Please, Father. He's calling me, he's reaching out to me." I don't know what to do. Father Dominic paused, looking at me with a kind of sorrow in his eyes that made my chest ache. "We have to sever the tie that's holding him here," he said softly. "But it's not easy. It's a dangerous path, and it requires more than just your love. You'll need to face the truth about what happened to him. You'll need to confront what lies beyond death." I swallowed hard, fear clawing at me. The idea of confronting the unknown, of facing what had happened to Noah, was terrifying. But if it was the only way to help him, to bring him peace, then I would do it. "Please, Father." "I'm ready." Father Dominic looked at me one last time, his gaze steady and understanding. "Very well. But understand this, what we are about to attempt is not without consequences. You may not get the answers you seek. You may not be able to bring him back completely. But you will at least understand the truth of his situation. And that, in itself, may help him move on." The weight of his words hung in the air like a cloud, but it didn't matter. I had come this far. There was no turning back now. "Let's begin," I whispered, my heart in my throat. Father Dominic led us through the church, past the rows of pews and into a small, dimly lit room at the back. The atmosphere in the church was still, almost suffocating, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath in anticipation of what was to come. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me, but I didn't dare speak. I couldn't, not with everything I had learned. The more I knew, the less I understood. We entered the room, and Father Dominic motioned for us to sit. The space was simple, with only a small altar, a few candles flickering in the corners, and a weathered wooden table covered in books and scrolls. It smelled faintly of incense, and the light from the candles seemed to flicker in strange patterns, like shadows trying to hide in the corners. "Sit," he said again, his voice steady and calm. "This may take time, and it will require your full focus. We must be prepared for whatever comes." I sat down on the cold stone floor, my back straight, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. Mr. Silas sat beside me, his expression unreadable, though I could feel his unease in the air between us. He had seen much tonight, but I could tell this was unlike anything he had ever dealt with. Father Dominic lit a few more candles and then placed them in a circle around us, muttering quiet prayers under his breath. The room seemed to grow darker, despite the soft glow from the candles. The shadows stretched long across the stone walls, their presence like a silent observer to everything happening in this sacred space. "Before we proceed, I must explain the ritual," Father Dominic said, his voice low but firm. "This is a delicate process, one that cannot be rushed. You must be prepared for what you might witness." I swallowed hard, my throat dry, but I nodded. I'll do whatever it takes, just get him out of there. Father Dominic's eyes softened as he looked at me, a mixture of sympathy and something else, something I couldn't quite place. This is not just about freeing your son, Miss Vance. This is about the balance between worlds. What we are attempting may alter the course of your life forever. There are forces at play that we cannot fully control, forces that can be dangerous. I met his gaze, not flinching. I don't care. He's my son. I need to save him. He nodded solemnly. I understand. We'll begin with a prayer, a cleansing of sorts, to open the door between the realms. But remember, once this door is opened, the truth will be revealed. The truth about what happened to your son and where he has been. My breath hitched at his words. The truth. I had been so focused on saving Noah, on bringing him back, that I hadn't allowed myself to consider the full extent of what this might mean. What if the truth was something I wasn't ready for? What if uncovering it meant losing him again, in a way I couldn't recover from? Father Dominic began to chant, his voice rising and falling in a rhythmic cadence. I couldn't understand the words, but I felt the air in the room shift, as if the very atmosphere was responding to his prayers. A strange energy filled the space, and I felt something stir deep inside me, a sense of something ancient. Something old and powerful, awakening in the shadows. The room grew colder, and a chill ran down my spine. The candles flickered violently, their flames bending unnaturally, casting long, twisted shadows against the walls. My heart raced, my breath shallow as I looked at the altar. The air itself felt thick, as if it were heavy with the weight of everything I had tried to deny, and then, as if on cue, the phone in my pocket buzzed. The familiar feeling of dread washed over me. It was Noah. I pulled it out, my hands trembling, and saw the message on the screen. Mom, it's so dark. I can't move. I can't feel anything. Please, help me. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The urgency in them, the fear, it was real. He was still out there, trapped. I could feel the desperation in his voice, and my heart shattered all over again. Father Dominic. I began, my voice barely a whisper. He's calling again. What should I do? Father Dominic looked up from his prayer, his face pale, and nodded solemnly. Hold the phone. Let him speak. Let him guide you. I did as he instructed, placing the phone to my ear, feeling the weight of it pressing against my skin. I closed my eyes and tried to steady my breath, trying to push the fear away. I couldn't let my panic control me. I had to focus. I had to listen. A long, drawn-out silence passed before Noah's voice finally came through the phone, weak and distant. Mom, are you there? I don't know where I am. I feel like I'm floating. It's cold. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I forced myself to stay calm. I'm here, Noah, I whispered. I'm Mia. I'm going to help you. Just hold on. But his next words made my blood run cold. Mom, I can see. I can see something. Something dark. It's looking at me. It's not letting me go. I can't move. It's pulling me back. I froze. The fear in his voice was suffocating. What was pulling him back? What was he seeing? Something that wasn't supposed to be there. Father Dominic stood, his face grim, and began to move around the circle of candles, muttering more prayers under his breath. I could feel the pressure mounting, the energy in the room intensifying. The air itself seemed to hum with an ancient power. The room became unbearably cold. My breath formed mist in the air, and the shadows seemed to twist and coil like living things creeping along the walls. Noah's voice came through again, broken and desperate. Mom, it's so dark. I'm scared. There's something else here. It's not human. It's trying to pull me down. Father Dominic's face tightened in concentration. Stay calm, Miss Vance. He is not alone in that realm. There are others there, some trapped like him, some not so innocent. That darkness he feels, that pull, it's something ancient, Something that's been waiting for a moment like this. I felt my pulse quicken, panic rising in my chest. Not human. What did he mean by that? Who else could be there with Noah? But Father Dominic raised his hand, signaling for silence. This is the moment of truth, he said, his voice steady despite the growing tension. Once we cross this threshold, there is no going back. If Noah is to be freed, if his soul is to be allowed to pass on, we must sever the bond between him and this world. The darkness he feels. It's the final barrier, a force that doesn't want him to leave. Father, I can't lose him again, I whispered, my voice breaking. Please, what do I need to do? Father Dominic's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of fear in his gaze. Trust in the process. Trust in the ritual. You've already crossed into the unknown, Miss Vance. The only way forward is to let go. The air in the room grew even colder, the candle flames flickering erratically as Father Dominic continued his chant, his voice growing more urgent with each passing moment. I could feel a strange pressure pressing down on me, like a weight on my chest, as if something or someone was watching. Waiting for the right moment to strike, Noah's voice crackled through the phone again. More distant now, almost as if he were far away. His words were slurred and strained, filled with raw fear. Mom, I can't. I can't stay here. I'm so cold. There's something here. It's so dark. It's pulling me back. Please don't let it take me. My breath caught in my throat. The desperation in his voice was gut-wrenching. It's pulling me back. What did he mean by that? Was there something else in that place with him? Something dark. I closed my eyes tightly, trying to push away the panic that was rising inside me. No, I can't lose him again. I won't. I gripped the phone tighter, focusing all my thoughts on Noah. Stay with me. Noah, stay with me, please, Father Dominic. Sensing my distress, placed a hand on my shoulder, grounding me as he continued to chant in an ancient tongue I couldn't understand. The energy in the room grew heavier, more oppressive, and I felt a cold gust of wind rush through the church, extinguishing a few of the candles in its wake. The shadows seemed to deepen, stretching unnaturally against the walls. There's something here, Father Dominic said quietly, more to himself than to me. The darkness he feels is not just the pull of the grave. It's a presence, something ancient, something malevolent. It is trying to keep him from moving on. My heart pounded in my chest. Malevolent. What did he mean by that? Could it be what Noah had felt, the darkness trying to pull him back? The thought sent a chill through me. I had always believed in the natural order, life, death, the afterlife. But this was something I had never imagined. Father Dominic stopped chanting for a moment and turned to face me. Ms. Vance, you must focus now. This next step is the most crucial. We must sever the bond between your son and this world. The dark force that is keeping him here feeds off the tie you share with him, your grief, your love, and your desire to hold on. I blinked, not understanding. What do you mean? I whispered. How can love be the thing holding him back? Father Dominic's expression softened, his voice gentle. Love is a powerful thing. But when a soul is caught between worlds, love becomes a tether. Grief is the anchor that keeps it from moving forward. But love and grief also make the tether hard to sever. It becomes a kind of prison, and the soul becomes trapped. I felt my throat close up. Is that what I had done? Had my inability to let go, my desperate need to keep him close, created this barrier? He looked at me, his eyes filled with understanding. You must release him, Miss Vance. You must free him from the emotional shackles that bind him to this world. I trembled at the thought. Letting go of my son? How could I do that? How could I ever let go? But Father Dominic's gaze was steady, his voice calm yet unwavering. You've held on for 15 years, Miss Vance. Now it's time to let him go. For his sake, and for yours, tears welled up in my eyes as I clutched the phone to my ear. Noah, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to keep you from peace. But I need you to be free. I need you to be whole again. The phone in my hand buzzed again, jolting me from my thoughts. I held it closer, hearing Noah's voice, faint but clear. Mom, I can't. I'm slipping, please. Don't let them take me back. I want to come home. My heart shattered. The words were barely audible, but they were enough to make me feel as if the world around me were crumbling. How could I be strong enough to let him go? How could I face the fact that this was the final step, the last goodbye? Father Dominic looked at me, his face solemn. It's time, Miss Vance. This is the moment. You must speak to him now, from your heart. Let him know that he is loved, that it's okay to move on. I took a deep, shuddering breath, holding the phone tightly in my hand. My fingers shook as I held it close to my ear. Noah, I whispered, my voice trembling. I love you. I always will. But it's time. You can't stay here anymore. You have to go. The phone crackled in my ear, and for a moment I thought the connection had been severed. But then Noah's voice came through again, faint but steady. Mom, I don't want to go. I felt the tears spill freely from my eyes. I know, baby. I know. But it's time. You have to go where you belong. You're not alone. I'll always love you. I'll always be with you. But you need to be at peace. The phone went silent, and for a moment I thought I had lost him again. My heart was racing, my breath shallow, but I refused to look away. Then a light flickered in the room, brighter than the candles, almost blinding. A gust of wind howled through the church, and I felt the air shift, like something was being pulled from this world into another. The phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Noah. Thank you, Mom. I'm free now. I'll always be with you. I love you. The words hit me like a wave, the final release. My son was gone, truly gone. But he was free, and so was I. I dropped the phone into my lap, my hands shaking. The room seemed to quiet. The oppressive weight lifted from my chest, and for the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of peace. Noah was finally at rest. Father Dominic stepped forward, his face grave but compassionate. You did it, he said softly. You freed him. I nodded, tears still streaming down my face, but for the first time, I didn't feel lost. I felt lighter, as though the burden of grief had finally been lifted. I had let him go, and in doing so, I had given him the peace he deserved. The next few days felt surreal. The grief that had consumed me for so long had dissipated, replaced with a quiet acceptance. I knew that Noah had moved on, that he was free from the darkness that had held him in limbo. And though I missed him with every part of me, I knew that he was at peace. The phone, with its eerie glow, was gone. But the memories of him remained, the good memories, the love we had shared. And as I sat in his room, surrounded by the things that once defined his life, I could almost hear his voice again, whispering through the silence, I'm okay. Mom, I'll always be with you. I smiled through my tears, knowing that he was right. In some way, he always would be.